everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of our vodcast series with Lee from Reform. Hello.
Hey, how's it going? You're good?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, how are you?
Yeah, always good. Very well, thank you. Sorry if you can hear that sniff. I just mentioned to you just off camera, but yeah, my dog is deciding to come and jump in on this call. So
yeah,
sorry, just ignore it.
We've got an uninvited guest who I'm sure will add to the podcast throughout. So any snoring or any unpredicted noises, it is the dog, and it's
100% the dog, not me.
So number 3 in the series, we have done all about your why. So why you started, why you continue. Then last week we did about marketing and how important that is, and also, you know, not to kind of just stick a finger in there and hope that that marketing type works for you, to either speak to an expert or to do some serious research on what's right for your business. Today we're going to talk about
future planning, but it's not as boring as it sounds, I promise. I absolutely promise.
Okay.
I don't mean the boring side of future planning. No, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because it's something I've bungled a few times myself. Thanks for having me, by the way. I really appreciate it.
No problem. You're welcome. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, you guys are just lush. I love it. It's something that I've messed up quite a few times myself, where I've been running towards a bunch of things without actually having an exact thing that I'm trying to run towards. I wanted to use money as an example today because everyone, you know, it's an obviously a popular thing to talk about. But what I've noticed with a lot of businesses that we work with in Reform is that you start asking questions. So obviously one of the things that we do is we help businesses get funded, and we help them find finance amongst a bunch of other things. And one of the things that comes up quite often is you'll say to a client, okay, how much do you need? And they'll go, I don't know, 1.5 M. Okay, right, no worries. What are you going to do with that money? Cash flow. Well, honestly, what are you going to use? That's quite a lot of money. What are you going to use it for? And 9 times out of 10, they don't have an actual idea as to what it is that they're going to do. Okay. And I kind of realized that I've done this a lot myself, where I've kind of come up with ideas and I've been like, right, I want to build a business. But I haven't kind of thought about the minutiae in the middle of like, well, Hannah said, how big does that business need to be, or how small? How many days a week do I want to work? Do I want to work every day of the year? Do I want to work these hours? Do I want to be able to do this? What's the actual number? Am I going to sell the business? And if I'm going to sell it, what am I going to take from it? And what's that number? Do I want to pay myself a salary? And if so, how much is that? And all these little sort of details where as soon as you've got the actual goal at the end of it, it's like going to the gym or figuring out something, you know, you want to run a marathon. So you have to work out, okay, that's 26 miles, 20 miles, whatever it is. And I need to work that backwards and reverse engineer it. Chill, Bubba. Good girl. So the idea
is agreeing with you. I think she's going, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah, she's just like, yes, Papa. Yes. So the idea is that you can come up with an actual thing to work towards, and then that way you can do baby steps like we talked about before. Because life seems to do that thing where if you've got an A to a B section where you want to move between the two, do you want me to cut this? I'm so sorry.
No,
if you're getting too much of a pain.
No, don't worry. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. All I'm going to say is I feel like what I think business owners should do is they should say, right, I want 1.5 million, but then almost kind of work backwards from that. So from that 1.5 million, I need £200,000 to buy a shop, and slowly work back. And I think, I don't know, but I think the majority of the time, Lee, you'll probably find that people either are way off, or they're either way off as in the amount they want, or they're way off in their calculations of what they're actually going to need to start a business, continue a business, you know, help a business grow.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And obviously the thing with life is you'll have 2 sections. You're here and you're trying to get here. And all that life does will try and pull you off that straight line. The idea is it's very simple to go, right, okay, there's my destination. I'm running towards that. Oh, hang on a sec, my boiler's just broke, or, you know, there's a pandemic or whatever it is, or there's a row in the background. And that kind of reverse engineering and working out something backwards not only means that you can work out the exact thing that you want, but it also means that you can figure out those little baby steps of how to get there as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it definitely does to me, you know, and I think you always see those, you know, anyone who's on LinkedIn, you always see the post, don't you, where they're saying about how to reach your goal, and you have the A to B, like you've just said. And then it's got how you actually reach your goal. And it's that almost life support machine.
Exactly
graph, which is saying you never get from A to B. And if you do get from A to B in a totally straight line, you've probably not done something right, because it shouldn't be that easy. Because if it was that easy, everybody would do it.
100%. The other thing that's worth mentioning is when people are trying to, and it's not just about money, obviously, it depends what your goals are. Just using money just because we're talking about business. But obviously, like if you're trying to make £1 million, for instance, if you can figure that out a bunch of different ways. Do you need to get paid £1 million invoice, or do you need to get 10 £100,000 invoices, or do you need to have a subscription that's like £10 per month times X amount of months? Do you know what I mean? And there's so many different ways to kind of granularize, that's a word I've just made up, granularize that. You are being a nightmare, Squisher.
When a business owner comes to you for funding and they come up with that figure, so 1.5 million, and you say, well, why do you need that? Will you sit and talk through them? Because what we find at the Director's Choice is that a lot of the time that business owners, half of it is they don't actually understand what it is they need to run a business.
Yes.
So they almost know generally, so for example, if I was opening a coffee shop, I would need to have a coffee shop. I would need the equipment and furniture and everything to go with it. I'd need the stock for it. I'd need to be able to pay for my utilities. I'd probably like to pay myself, and I might want to pay a member of staff. Now, that's all the very basic stuff. I've definitely not mentioned about any tax I might need to pay.
No, accountants or blah, 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 blah.
So do you go through, because I mean, it's all very good people putting all of this financial planning in place, but a lot of the time people don't actually know what they need to financially plan for. Do you help people do that?
Couldn't agree more, first and foremost. Secondly, it's one of the things I love about the Director's Choice is that it's a suite, isn't it? It's a whole idea of this is something you haven't thought about. This is something you haven't thought about. To answer your question, 100%. I mean, without like some of the, even from today, we had someone that was asking for £800,000. And I said, okay, cool. How what's that for? It's always cash flow. Everyone always says cash flow and expansion. Okay, well, how do you mean? What cash flow do you need? What's it for? Marketing. Okay, so how much are you going to spend on marketing over how many months? Because at the end of the day, taking anything on face value from a lender's point of view, it's just not going to happen. Like they're going to do their meticulous DD. They're going to check everything inside out. They're going to want your bank statements. They're going to want to make sure that you've got affordability and that you can actually repay the loan, because that's what they're interested in. They're also interested, obviously, if they're good and ethical, in you growing and expanding and getting to your business goals. But first and foremost, they're not going to take your word for anything. So we try and go through the fact of like, right, okay, what do you actually need the money for? And try and be really, really minute with that. Is, have you got an accountant? No. Okay, well, how much is an accountant going to cost you for your firm? £300 a month, for instance. Okay, cool. So then we've got that over 2 years and we can work out how much that is. You can tell my maths isn't good, because otherwise I'd just be going straight on the like, it's this, it's this. Always been terrible at maths. So with that in mind, you can also, okay, you need an accountant, you're trying to employ 3 more people, so you've got payroll and tax, and then national insurance on top of that. And do you know what all these numbers are and how much they, amount to? Have you got some, do you need some spare capital just in case something goes wrong, or blah, 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 and how much is that? And what do you think your running costs are, and what are your overheads? And, could go on for days. But you're completely right. Like the majority of people just start a business with the best will in the world, because they've either got a love for something, a passion for something, they see a gap in the market, or they've just been watching Dragon's Den and they go, cool, I could do that. Which is definitely not a bad reason to start ever at all. But I think from all the businesses we work with, the ones that flourish and don't sort of die a death over the first couple of years are the ones where they've got the majority, not all, because you can't, but the majority of their ducks in line. And, they've thought about these things and they've actually projected forward. They don't have to be completely on point projections or anything like that. And the reason that I sort of mentioned future planning in general is, like you said, if you can do something and go, here's my goal, you can work backwards from that goal and go, right, this is where I am, this is where I want to get to. How many little baby steps does it take for me to get to, how many kind of checkpoints does it take for me to get to the top of Everest? You can climb Everest quite easily if you do it in a bunch of little checkpoints over a lot of time.
Okay, so with regards to when business owners first start out, they obviously will be starting with like the bare minimum, the majority of them. And then a lot of them, and this is going off the subject a little bit, a lot of them might, if they come to you and they say, I want a 1.5 million, but you're not really, they then might start looking at investors. Would you say, you know, when you initially start your business, that's because I can't think of, there's obviously lots of different products, isn't there, where you can do that? I can't even think of one off the top of my head, where you can go and you can ask for investment, can't you? There's lots of sites you can put your service.
Oh, like angel investors and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, so, I mean, what's your experience of maybe if somebody does do some future planning and they come to you and they say, I want this, and you go, well, that's never going to happen. And they think, okay, I still want to do some future planning. I can't get my 1.5 million through a loan, and I'm going to look for investors. Would you say that's a good idea for people to do, or have you got an experience around people who've done that and how it's turned out?
Yeah, for real. I've actually got really personal experience with that myself. When I lost my previous business to COVID, which I think I mentioned before, and we lost everything. I nearly bankrupted myself, like hard. Made a stupid decision, you could argue, to carry on paying my staff. Not furlough anyone, with the idea that I was listening to the news, which I don't normally do. But I did. And I thought, you know what, maybe they're telling the truth this time. And maybe we will only have one lockdown, and then that turns to 2 and then 3, and the company money ran out. And then I started paying everyone out my own pocket, which ended up with 0. And that ran out. And then obviously had to let everyone go, and sort of lost everything. When I set up the new company, when I set up Reform, in fact, I had absolutely nothing, like completely nothing, like £5 in my pocket kind of thing. I had to borrow the remaining 12 quid, the remaining, however much that is, 5 plus whatever, to make 12, to do the incorporation fee. That's how bad my maths is, to do the incorporation fee kind of thing to get the company started. So we from day one had nothing. And one of the main things that we do is we market for financial providers and different banks and things like that. And obviously, if you know anything about PPC, and like we were talking about last week, you need money to put in the machine, which I didn't have. So we had to do the old school, you know, cold calling, knocking on doors and stuff like that. So I actually was looking for investment myself, which we managed to obtain. One of the best bits of advice I got about it at the time, when I was looking around, is friends, family, straight away, first port of call, of which I couldn't in that situation. And then the next thing was ask everyone. Well, my mentor, my business mentor, really, really sadly died. Christmas just gone. Different story for another day, but very respectable man. I owe a lot to. He always said to me with this, when I was looking for investment, he said, ask everyone, make it really public, stick it on your social media. It doesn't matter that people know that you're looking for money, because you're not looking for money because you want the money. You're looking for money because you've got an idea that can add value to people's lives, that can do something good. And if you believe in that, then ask everyone. The worst you're going to get is a no. People love that. In this country, people hate asking for money. They'll happily go for a loan, but they'll hate to say, even when they're completely in need, which has always blown my mind, because the worst you'll get is a no. It's like asking someone on a date, right? No, not up for it today. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll keep chipping away until it happens, or not, you know. But yeah. So to answer your question, yes. I would say if you've got an idea, or you want to start something, you've got an idea for a venture, and you've got passion and work drive behind it, and you don't have the money that you need to either get it off the ground or get it off of the runway so it's flying, but apart from still, I would beg and borrow, and from an investment point of view, you can go on things like my own experience. I don't want to badmouth them. My own experience with things like angel investors and stuff like that, you're going to get shafted. They're going to take a large amount of equity of your business because they know that you need it and you're at early days. Whereas if you can find someone, it's a local business person, or a member of family that might have a little wedge, where you can say, look, I tell you what, I'll give you 10% of the business. It's early days. I want 50 grand. And this is, and this is the important bit, which brings us back around to square one, is this is what I'm going to do with it. Business plan. Like it doesn't have to be super intricate, but you can't just go up to someone, can I have 100 grand, please? They're going to say, okay, well, what's it for? How are you going to use it? And you want to be able to back that up and go, well, look, I've already thought about that. Here's my projections. Here's what I think we can do. Everyone always over projects, which is a bit of a pain. So I would say be fairly, everything always takes longer than you think it will as well. So be fairly kind of, reasonable with that. If you're asking for investment and or a loan, you potentially don't need, no one needs 1.5 million to get a business idea off the ground. No one needs that. So does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah. And I suppose, I mean, you mentioned it earlier as well. It's anybody who watches Dragon's Den, people go on with these amazing products, but then when they state how much money they want, how much investment they want for what percentage, that's when the dragons really start saying, okay, what's your P&L? What's this? And it's no different. That bit, I guarantee, is the bit where people go, oh, I couldn't do that, because unfortunately, like we've said before, having the best product or service in the world isn't ever going to be enough to run a company, because whether you're going for investment or you're doing it yourself, you've got to understand how that company is going to run to make that business successful. And if you don't understand your P&L and your accounts, you're going to have to get an accountant. If you don't understand how to do your marketing, you're going to have to get someone to do your marketing for you, or that business is never going to be successful. And I think, like I say, I think that's the bit on Dragon's Den that people forget. These people who go on, who have the best product and service but can't back it up with the company stats, are the ones that never get, and obviously some of them do then come forward, don't they? And they've got like the best product in the world, and they're like, we went for funding and they didn't give it to us. But if you consider how many people go on Dragon's Den, it's a very small percentage that actually make it through without having all the collateral that they need, all the information.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my last point on it would be, the other thing is people love to BS, like they really do. And
of course they do.
Exactly that. So if you can't, when you're asking someone about their P&L, for instance, you can tell 9 times out of 10 when they're saying to you, and you say, okay, cool, prove it. And they go, oh, well, Hannah said, no, I probably need to. So probably the best bit of advice I could give, as far as if you're trying to raise capital for whatever reason, whether that's with an investor, whether that's with a lender, whether that's borrowing from mum and dad, brother, sister, aunties, uncles, just be honest. I mean, that's probably the best bit of advice I could give in life anyway. Just be as honest as possible. Don't try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes, and be able to back the stuff up that you're saying that you can do. That's where I would hit that.
Absolutely. Well, as always, as informative as ever, I feel like we could probably go on talking about this for about another hour, but we won't. So if you would like to speak to Lee some more and find out about funding, or he would be more than happy to talk to you about any of the subjects we've covered in the podcast so far, you can find Lee on the directorschoice.com platform if you go to business funding, and we will be back next week with the last one in our series. So thank you very much again, Lee, and see you next week.
Perfect. Thank you for having me, Sam. Have a great day.
Bye.